I think I would be fascinated to have lots of different voices from lots of different perspectives in this conversation. And I realize that I'm not asking you to speak for, like, I'm not asking you to speak on behalf of anyone besides yourself. And my question to you, Phil, is having had your entire career in adventure and experiential education here in the United States, and yet a lot of your life not in the United States, what are some things that most American facilitators do that feels odd to you because you are not American? Does that sound insensitive?
Hmm.
I mean, like, from a cultural perspective, what are some things you're like, wow, this would never happen at home? And you can see why, like, I would love to have a lot of different people from different countries in this space.
This I'm gonna reflect back to when I first came to the States because I've been here so long now. I sort of feel like I'm a blend of or a mutt. I sometimes refer myself like I because it's just I've been here and I'm kind of my style is maybe blended. In fact, in the previous training, someone just asked me how has my style changed over the years, and I'm like, style. So hard. It's like, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when you're like watching your kids grow up and when you live with them, and then someone who hasn't seen them in a while says how tall they've got. You don't realize it because you've been like seeing them every day. It's sort of how I feel about this. But when I first came to the States, I was massively put off by the educational style that I was seeing that was American, which was super peppy, like just crazy, like silliness. I don't know. I wouldn't even say silliness. It was just like high energy. Because I would say my style is more silly, but I think I'm a little drier. There's just like it's just very peppy, and I think like I think the peppiness then ties into I think even like styles of teaching when it comes to like knot tying or whatever, or lows or highs. I do not like the stories. I've mentioned this like before, like the stories that are associated with like a low activity, like the nitro crossing and like there's alligators, all that stuff, or the knot tying, like strangle this or poke this in the eye, or like I don't know, whatever the stories are. I have an internal. I think maybe it's the English in me, like an internal eye roll to certain things that I can't seem to like move past.
So, is there something about like the lack of, like, it's unnecessary and not super concrete, maybe?
Yeah, but I also don't think I don't think it's centered in real. That's the part that I'm like I kind of I wonder. I don't know if it's an American thing. I admit it's like overly stereotypical, but like America from the outset when I was in England felt like very hot, like Hollywood actors, art. Like it's a lot of that world that comes out of America. That in England, like it's the thing that like English comedy and the difference between American comedy and English comedy tends to be like darker and drier. It's perceived as darker when the style in this country is much lighter, but I don't know if there's like but in England I know I wouldn't have seen it as dark, right? Like it's the same way if I think this is a food related thing. In this country there is so much food is sweet and spicy, like intensities. For an American palate, when you go to England, you think all the food is dull. But as an English person growing up, I never thought that. I didn't eat this stuff and think, wow, this doesn't taste. In fact, those tastes are stuff I crave that I can't seem to get here. Everything's kind of spicier or sweeter. And I wonder, and I think that maybe in the style of facilitation, it's always like elevated. There was someone I'm blanking on who, but someone said in a workshop I attended during the COVID, this phrase, socially aspirational emotions.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and I remember that really hitting me of like, yes, there are certain emotions that are aspiring socially. So like happiness, everyone wants to aspire to that because if you see someone walking down the street and they're all happy, you feel great about it. But if you're sad, you don't want to see someone crying, you know, like that's why people apologize for crying. I think that is, even though of course it happens in England almost to a massive degree when it comes to emotions, because this whole stiff upper lip thing, I think that there is toxic positivity. I'm keep using more
Keep
and more
going.
phrases, but I think toxic positivity is a very American ideal that is greater than what happened during COVID when people started referencing it more often. I think that it's a universal experience in the States. Whereas, and of course, there's the other side of things, and there's also tons of negativity. But it's almost seemed like you can't mention it. American, if I was to say something bad about America in some way, it's really taken very differently.
Hmm.
It's taken very strongly by people. Like it's it's an unacceptable to talk negative.
And is that
Whereas
different in
I
England?
would, oh, of course, there's patriots, of course, but in England, I seem to like, I don't know, you'd give each other stick. That's, I don't, is that an English phrase?
I've never heard that before.
It's essentially give each other, you're mean to each other. I don't know. Growing up, it was a thing, right? Like, there's a very English thing of like, we would call it taking the piss as well, you
I
know?
mean, I know what taking a piss means.
Yeah, but like, no, but it's not, it's different than urination, of course. This is taking the piss out of someone is teasing them for something.
Got
Um,
it.
but yeah, like, I don't know. That's what I'm sort of, as we're talking more, this is what's making me think of that. I think that, but even now, like as I facilitate, I do energy as a consideration. So I want to be like heightened, but I also have this lens of like, I don't necessarily like the stories because I think people see past. Also, like, I don't see the point of like, all right, we got crossing from this side to this side because there's alligators. Like, what's the lesson I'm teaching you, or what's the? Am I
Hmm.
going to try to draw something from that story, or can I? Why can't I just say you're trying to get from one side to the other and just don't touch the ground? For me, that's like I know that for others, it's like they use it to encourage. I understand it, and I've seen people present those things, and it works really well. But I also can't come into a like I came into the workshop like on the second day of this workshop, and I had a really poor night's sleep, and I wasn't going to try to fake that I wasn't that I wasn't tired. Like people came in and they were like, "How are you?" And I was like, "I'm feeling rough. I'm tired. I hope you are good energy because my energy sucks." And I just was like said that to the group, but I just don't sometimes see that, and it's like I can't mention that I'm like having a bad day.
Right.
I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah. And I think it's, as I'm hearing you share, it reminds me of the challenge of when we talk in general about like an American approach, an English approach. Like, of course, that doesn't account for all the different individual personalities and styles. So it's dangerous to like talk about a whole country's approach to something. So I get that. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask you to think about the trainings that you've done. And you don't have to describe who the person is, but like, can you think of a situation where you've been like, oh, you know what? The way that like the environment in which I grew up or that I'm currently living is making it difficult, or there's some kind of barrier in me reaching this person because they came from, whether it's a country that has a completely different culture. So I'm not talking about personalities necessarily, but like, oh, this is not socially acceptable in this environment. And you have to sort of readjust something. Can you think of any time that that's happened?
yeah. Cursing
Mm.
in England we curse more freely. In this country, it's not. So this is very much cultural. I've had to really, really change my language. And that's, to be honest, partly why really I enjoy working with adults is I feel like I can be more myself and I don't have to watch what I'm saying all the time. And I don't mean it from like a sensitivity of offending someone for a cultural reason or religious reason or anything like that. It's more just the words that we use in England are different. The words are the same, but the context is different.
Sure.
And I've tried to. I don't want to. I wouldn't want to argue with the culture thing. Like, if at any point if I get called by the teacher because my daughter cursed, I'll know it's because of me.
Yeah, me
I
too.
won't. It won't be like, oh, who's the bad influence in this class? Like, it's gonna have been me because I say stuff that like that doesn't have meanness attached to it, but it's just like that's a word. Like the F word as an example, and I won't use it because we'll get made explicit on this episode. But if I say it, I can say it without it being mean. Whereas the word in this country is bad, In England, the context of the use of the word is bad. So if you stub your toe and you say the F word, no big deal. If I say F you, there's a big deal.
Right.
But in this country, it's all the word.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that has changed like the way that I say stuff. But I'll be honest, like I still like will curse occasionally with adult groups. And I did get it in an eval one time that someone was, upset that I had said a word, and it might have just been the S word, and I say it just the S word, but I know for some people that's a bigger deal than others. But
Mm-hmm.
that I think has been a challenge culturally, is the language. I think like there's a lot of benefit. Like my accent is always going to give me like a bit of a heads up, like a benefit, and I don't like that, to be honest. I'd rather people judge me for my actual abilities rather than like, oh, you're from England. But like the words I've used I have had to change. Like if I go back to England, people don't. They're like, oh, look at you, you've changed. You're American now. But like if you're an American listens to me, they'll think I'm English. I don't know. That I think has been a shift.
It makes me want to sort of get together, and I'm sure we go to conferences where this is possible and have several different countries represented and ask the question, how is facilitation in some of the practices that we espouse and some of the theories that we're all familiar with really coming from an American centric perspective and are therefore maybe not considering other things, right? I've certainly had participants from different parts of the world where I'm like, yeah, go ahead and try this. Make mistakes. It's fine. And they're like, where we're from, it's totally not okay to make mistakes. You either do it perfect or you're bad. And like, I've missed the mark a few times with sort of assuming that like everyone's on board with the like, just try it out. It's okay to fail. And I think that we talk about that from a philosophical perspective, but where I'm interested in thinking about, sparked by this conversation, is like, where do we also asking people to override in terms of the culture that they were raised in, right? And like for you to talk about the rah rah and the positivity of American culture, I 100% relate to that, and I think that does show up in our work a lot.
There's also a reality, like, and we work in this world of like having these conversations about facilitation and all the benefits. In I can still perceive that if I took some of the stuff back to England, like, because the question I've had people in my group who've like, we don't do this stuff in England, or we don't, this doesn't exist, and like, oh, if you went to England, you could start a business and start their stuff. I don't think I could, to the extent where I feel like still the stuff we do here would be considered touchy feely kumbaya stuff. Yeah, just I don't perceive it. I think that facilitation, when you Google facilitators, and there are other people out there from different parts of the world out there, the way that they facilitate, the way that they even define facilitation is different than maybe how we. I think an American facilitation would be centered much more around play, whereas maybe a European facilitation might be centered more on facilitating conversation and using things to elicit more opportunities to talk, and where we might be more playful. And I follow a few people on Instagram and LinkedIn and stuff, so I see some of this, like, I think it's AJ Smart, there's Romy Alexander, there's Jan Keck. But when I look some at their stuff, it doesn't, even though it's facilitation, it doesn't feel the same way. And it might be with the clients they work with, like,
Mm-hmm.
there's maybe a difference between corporate and the camp world. But because I think that summer camp is a part of this culture in this country, that I think playfulness is also partly a little bit more accepted in a larger world than maybe in those other countries.
That's a really good point. I mean, that at least from the way I was raised up to this industry, I really can't separate like the industry that I'm in and like summer camp. Like they're so intertwined. And I realize that summer camp, in the way that we describe it on this podcast, is a very American phenomenon.
I
Not
remember
just
I sent my mum, she works in school in England, a deck of Ubuntu cards. And I just thought, like, oh, I'll send her some stuff and you can use it. And as much as I could coach people through the use of it, I just they were struggling to find when they would use it, and I
yeah,
struggled to think when you wouldn't use them.
right. That's
Like,
such a good example.
but I think it's just not the same. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. Anyway,
Hmm. Well, thanks for taking a stab at that question. I look forward to asking it of other folks that I encounter from other parts of the world, which I don't often do this time of year, but certainly during summer camp training season. Maybe it's just a question of like, how is my style at odds with how you were raised? Wouldn't that be interesting?
Yeah.
That could be on the eval.
Yeah, well, that's that mining opposite experiences.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
who doesn't like this just because of the cultural style or whatever? I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I kind of rambled at some point during that, but I was train of thoughting it. So
Yeah,
whether or
that's
not
what I
that's
was
good,
hoping for. That was me asking you a question and hoping you would run with it. So
I ran with it. I ran somewhere, hopefully in a destination that is helpful, or I could have just run straight into a garbage dump.
Mm.
Okay, well, do you want to do your sign off?
Thank you for listening to another episode of Myself and Lisa, featuring myself and Phil.
Bye.
Bye.